Hello, everyone. This is John Hasselbauer, golf writer for thelines.com, and it is U.S. Open week. I got a big video ahead going through everything you need to know about the Los Angeles Country Club, the North Course, in advance of the third major of the year. Before we get any further, make sure you are subscribed to the Lines.com YouTube channel. Hit up the Discord, which is linked in the description as well. All of our bets, not just mine, but the whole community of the Lines in our golf betting discussion channel are being logged and discussed and talked about in that free Discord channel. It's where all my bets are posted in real time. And it continues to grow week over week. So appreciate the support there and appreciate the support on this YouTube channel. Please comment, anything, any thoughts you have on this tournament, any of your sleepers this week, anyone who you think is definitely going to win. Let me know in the comments. You can also find me on Twitter at PGA Tout. My preview article is live and pinned. It is what we'll be going over in this video as well in the first half, and then second half of this video, we'll go through a little bit of peek into the model and spend a little more time on analyzing the top of this field, making some decisions, not only from a betting standpoint, but also, a big DFS week in, major season. We're also talking about pools, which are, I feel like an under discussed topic in major weeks is pool strategy. So I also have an article on that as well. You can look on in the articles itself. We have links to the Discord right here on the right side. You can also go up here to get in the Discord. You can go up here to go on the Lines Twitter channel, or you can go to twitter.com and find me at PGA Tout. Just hit 15,000 followers this week, which begs the question, how many followers would I have if I hit winners with any regularity on the PGA Tour? But quick segue to the Canadian Open last week. What an incredible finish. Nick Taylor comes through at 75-1, broke a little bit of a PGA Tour outright drought for myself personally. First one since the Corrales in March. So a much needed outright from my bank account's standpoint. It was a huge week for us, anybody who tailed along. Opening the week with the Aaron Rai first-round leader, his third of the season, an absolute stalwart on Thursdays. Munozian, I think is the word that we're using. Whenever anybody goes on a tear of three first-round leads in one season, all coming at 80-1 plus. So we love Aaron Rai. We especially love that he did not beat Nick Taylor at the Canadian Open. He really pushed. He was one stroke short. So the vibes are good. That's 2 weeks in a row hitting outrights after Rose Zhang. On the LPGA, so we're going for 3 straight this week at the U.S. Open. The U.S. Open is my favorite tournament to bet. It seems like one of those events where you really know off the top who can and can't compete. You're not going to get too many surprises. Every single year, the USGA sets this up. It really is advantage to the long hitters, advantage to the well-rounded players who don't have a flaw in their game, and especially the best long iron players who, when they lengthen the course, they have a lot more 200 plus approaches in or 175 plus approaches in. Who's the best with their long irons? Who can hack it out of rough? That's traditionally what you need to do at a U.S. Open. Not so straightforward this week. There are a lot of nuances to Los Angeles Country Club, which we will get into. But traditionally, when we get to a U.S. Open, this is the type of event that is a little bit more predictable, I would say, than most other weeks on the PGA Tour. My track record, personally, betting the U.S. Open is pretty solid. Going back to 2019, I was in on Gary Woodland. That was probably my first foray into outright golf betting. Hit him at, I want to say 120-1. Paid for my golf clubs, won a couple $1,000 on that. And haven't looked back on golf betting since. So the U.S. Open, always on Father's Day, always a special place in my heart. And, ever since, we've had a lot of close calls at the U.S. Open, a lot of, what should have been. From my perspective, we had Matt Wolff in 2020, who was the only other person to not shoot over par besides Bryson DeChambeau. So that one felt close. In 2021 at Torrey Pines, I feel like everybody had a guy in the mix. That was a great leaderboard down the stretch. John Rahm ultimately won. I think I had Louis Oosthuizen, who was a share of the lead going into Sunday. Justin Thomas, Colin Morikawa, all threatening. And then 2022, I had Will Zalatoris, who really looked like he had, one hand on the trophy, kind of sliced one out of bounds on the back nine, or not out of bounds, but forced a layup, forced a bogey, stopped his momentum. Matt Fitzpatrick hit some incredible shots, incredible putts to switch the momentum there. So that was another close call and no victory there. But, since 2019, I feel like I've had a good sweat at the U.S. Open, just channeling that, thought process of bombers, long irons, all around game. Don't get too crazy with long shots in this tournament. Segueing, though, from the traditional U.S. Open to what we have in store at the Los Angeles Country Club, I'll go straight into the tournament preview now. This is, again, at thelines.com. And if you are new and not familiar with thelines.com, how this all works, in a major week, you can just go right to this golf navigation, click on U.S. Open preview. You can also go to the U.S. Open odds page, which is this separate one right here. But starting with the preview article and, just scrolling down to an introduction to Los Angeles Country Club. This is a very historic course, very private course, and one of the most visually appealing ones, and just different for a PGA U.S. Open event than we've seen in most years. If you think of all of the recent U.S. Open venues, you're probably thinking Torrey Pines, Winged Foot, Bethpage Black was a while ago, but those style of courses that are really long, tons of rough, you're hacking it out. You kind of need to hit fairways, but you also can't because the fairways are so narrow. So then it just becomes this kind of bomb and gouge fest. And then you're just trying to get somewhere greenside in two, and you're hacking to get up and down from thick greenside rough. That's basically how all of these U.S. Opens have been. I think they've gotten a little smart to it over recent years, realized after Bryson at Winged Foot that there is sort of a one-dimensional type of player that's going to overpower a course regardless of how penal you make missing the fairway with thick rough. So to this week ahead at Los Angeles Country Club, it is the polar opposite. It is hardly any rough around the fairways. Instead, it's really hard pan, firm and fast fairways, tight undulations, hitting the right speed slots of the fairway. You're going to have, as a visual, like your traditional flat fairway looks like this. Some of these fairways are going to look like this. And so if you are driving it here, you're good. If you drive it in the middle, you're going to trickle down. That is, that is essentially the best I can explain why accuracy is important at this course. It is not a flat fairway. If you miss it right, you are going to get out of position. There are certain pin locations that are completely inaccessible, even if you are in the fairway and have a good lie. If you are on the right side and the pin is on the right side and there's a bunker surrounding it to the right as well, you are forced to hit it left and give yourself at best like a 30-foot putt for birdie. So there's a lot of strategy to this course. It's really important to know the course, but if you haven't played it before, I think these practice rounds are going to be huge. Have a caddy who has some sort of local knowledge. I think that's going to be huge. But similar to Augusta, which is, a big, talking point this week, it's hard to compare too many courses to Augusta, but if you've had success there, the biggest difference between here and Augusta is this is a par 70, that's a par 72 with 2 extra par 5s. And the angles which you need to hit your shots here, it is requiring shot shaping from both left to right, right to left. I think there were comments this year at the Masters that they've lengthened it so much that it kind of takes shot shaping out of it. I think you're going to see that come back into play here. You're going to have to hit cut shots to hold some fairways. You're going to have to hit low draws to get the best run out. It's not this sort of bombing away, carry distance, carry it past the bunkers type of course. You really need to be accurate. I think we're already seeing that it's not a driver on every hole. Some guys are seeing value in hitting 3-wood, 5-wood, shorter because they can control it and kind of work it better. on tight fairways. So I think that's going to be something that's interesting to monitor. But if you're a good creative shot maker, that's going to be huge this week, because even if you are pounding fairways, you're going to have uneven lies, similar to what you would see again at Augusta or Kapalua. You could be dead center of the fairway, but still have the ball above your feet. So you need to be comfortable hitting these different flighted shots. There's going to be holes where you want to aim it right of the green entirely and let it trickle back down into the green. There's going to be holes where you want to hit it past the green and spin it to the pin. So any sort of experience that you've had playing this course, I think, is huge, because there's so many nuances to it where guys may struggle on Thursday, Friday, and then something clicks on Saturday, Sunday, because they just learn from their mistakes of places that you can't miss too. But overall, it's going to be a really unique test. I wrote about this a lot in the article itself, but it really is this sort of amalgamation of every other major venue. When we talk about Los Angeles Country Club, it is a USGA setup, so they're going to want it to play similar to other US Opens. I think Shinnecock and Chambers Bay are probably the two most recent US Opens that are like this, where they did not lean on rough and instead really wanted the course to play super firm and fiery. So looking at guys who've played well in those types of US Open specifically, I think will be important this week. We talked about the Augusta comps. I think there's a lot to that with the undulations, the size of the property, how many sloping lies you have, and just a need to not hit stock yardages, but be a little bit creative with your ball striking. And then I think comparison to some of these open style links courses, in the sense that if you hit these wide fairways in the right spots, they'll run out and you'll get a ton of distance. And shorter, accurate hitters have been able to kind of stay in the mix on those layouts. The biggest difference between this and an open venue is, I mean, there could be wind. It's hard to project the wind, but it's not going to be as much of a factor. We have seen at the Genesis at Riviera, which is just down the road from here, that wind can be a significant factor, but that is in February, so we're playing in a little bit different time of year this time around. But it's really the elevation change that makes it so different. You're not hitting into these steep uphill elevated greens. You're not hitting significant downhill drives from an elevated tee box at the Open. It's really completely flat, which allows the elements to affect the course more. So that won't be the case here. But I think when you talk about being able to be a little bit more forgiving off the tee, something that Cam Smith really took advantage of when he won at St. Andrews, that's something that comes into play a little bit here as well. So that's the best I could describe Los Angeles Country Club from a comp standpoint. I would also add, in addition to all of those, desert golf is something that I'm going to be looking into a little bit more. TPC Scottsdale, I think, is a sneaky great comp for this week. Phoenix, not too far away from Los Angeles. It is going to be dry in Los Angeles. And similarly, that's a course where you don't need to overpower it, TPC Scottsdale, but it is long. And if you're somebody who can pound fairways, it's going to run out. But you also have to be careful that it doesn't run out too much into those natural cacti hazards or water. In the case of LACC, there's no water on the property, but they do have the barrancas, which are just as penal as going into natural cacti in a desert setup or even water, because there might be some lateral forced punch outs you get. Very tricky to predict what kind of lie you're going to get if you run out into a barranca, which I expect to be happening a lot. So long story short, what do you need to do at Los Angeles Country Club? I would say slightly more of an emphasis on accuracy than driving distance. I think if you're just not thinking your way through each hole and just trying to hit it as far as you can, you're going to get into more trouble than it's going to help you. If you're in the fairway on the right side of it, it's a long course for sure, and there's I think at least 4 500 plus yard par 5 or par 4s and 2 par 3s that are over 280, which is kind of crazy, but plays a little bit shorter than that. With the downhill, long irons are going to be important, but I don't think this is a course that like a Matt Kuchar, Russell Henley, Abe Answer. Those guys have played well in like kind of firmer conditions before. I don't think this is the type of U.S. Open where you cross those guys out. Approach play, obviously very important. I would say just performance in comp, like massive undulated fairway conditions, which is really like Augusta, maybe a little bit of Kapalua. Southern Hills as well is a good comp this week. So guys who are comfortable hitting off of these like above your feet or below your feet fairway lies. A lot of guys are these modern TrackMan golfers who just pound ball speed on the range and stuff. I don't think that works at LACC at all. So you need touch. You need to be smart about how you navigate this course, hit it to the right areas, know where to miss, know where not to. All of those subjective things that I think you get out of veterans and you get out of players with proven consistent results in majors. And then short game, you're going to get a lot of tight lies, but you're also going to get a lot of the thickest rough on the property around the green. So just all around good short game. I think you can't be one dimensional. You can't be someone who's really good on tight lies, but not good in thick rough, because you're going to have to scramble all over, especially as expected over the weekend when it gets a little bit hotter, a little bit drier. They stop watering the course and everything. You're going to miss more greens. You're going to have to scramble a ton. That's always going to be important at U.S. Opens. You might get a little bit more tight lies than you normally would at a U.S. Open. But in general, just need a good short game, and we're playing on bent grass greens. So again, comp to Augusta, but preferably, some positive results on bent grass greens. Okay, so that is, I think, a good transition point to go from the article to the model itself, and I'll pull that up here, and we will start to talk about the key stats for the U.S. Open. At U.S. Opens, I tend to put a more broad weighting on broad stat profiles in my model, especially if we're playing on a course that we haven't seen before. It's not really important. It's not necessary to overcomplicate a model in a week where the cream rises to the top, right? So I think the model this week is a little bit more basic than what I normally would do. And then I've also just included some stats to look at that aren't necessarily factored into the model over here as well. But for LACC, first and foremost, I'm putting almost 20% of weight on strokes gained approach. Reason for that, I would sometimes split that up into less approach, but more specific proximity ranges. It's hard to tell how many approaches we're going to have from 200 plus versus 150, having not seen the course before. It's especially hard to project that on really firm fairways, where if you hit the right areas of them, Matt Kuchar, again, for example, might be able to hit a couple 320 yard drives this week and have 160 into some difficult holes. Or he could hit the same drive the next day, catch the wrong slope, and have 200 in. So I don't really want to get too hung up on proximity. I think you are going to have a lot of wedge shots on the shorter par fours. You're going to have shorter approaches in than you would expect for holes of this distance if the fairways are super firm and you are getting a lot of rollout. So I don't want to get too hung up on specific proximity ranges, but I know that approach will be important this week. It always is, but comparatively, I'm putting more weight there than I typically would. And then just tee to green, last 36. Who's coming in with the best tee to green form? I think all bets are off when you get to putting in a major. You're a little bit more focused. Some guys rise to the top, some don't, but it's tough for me to say you didn't putt well at the Canadian Open, so you won't putt well at a major. It's just apples and oranges, really. So I'm really leaning on tee to green and almost dismissing putting, understanding it's going to be just a different environment there this week. Around the green, super important always at a U.S. Open, something I think you can't ignore. You have to scramble a lot, so really looking for good touch around the green, specifically for LACC. Comp courses, everything we just went to with both the major examples, some of the desert examples, and other PGA Tour difficult scoring conditions. I think that will be important to reference this week. I do have Prox 200 plus, but with less weighting here. Strokes gained off the tee, I think it's important. not just looking at fairways gained or distance, but combining the two because, you can get away with being extremely accurate. You can maybe get away with being long and average accuracy wise. And if you have extra length, you can also lay back, hit more 3-woods, shape your shots a little bit more. So in general, that versatility of strong off-tee players, I think, is still very important here. I have just a small weight on stroke game putting. I've got difficult scoring conditions, bogey avoidance and difficult scoring conditions. Strokes gained short game on firm and fast surfaces should be pretty applicable this week. And just some longer tail proximity buckets and scoring ranges from par fours and par fives. But that is the model. Nothing groundbreaking, nothing as like severe from a mixed condition model standpoint as I typically would get into on a weekly PGA Tour event. But I think this will show the best players in the field rising to the top. So if we now go into the top 10 of the model, it starts with Scottie Scheffler. You can see all the ones here in this row, and we'll come back to everything there is to love about Scottie Scheffler here, but makes sense that he is number one in the model. Xander Schauffele actually seems like a good value this week. Second in the model at 18-1. I've seen longer odds than that actually this week. You probably still find 20. And I want to say, actually, let me see if I can go into event history here. I want to say Xander is number one in U.S. Open event history over the last 5 years. So if we look at Xander's results, somebody that I will be interested in for DFS has not finished worse than T14 like he did last year at this event. That is incredible consistency on such a variety of PGA of U.S. Open venues, and now he comes home to California. And the last time he was in California for a U.S. Open, it was a T7, and before that at Pebble Beach, it was a T3. So it seems like he plays well in at home in California, in U.S. Opens, at any U.S. Open, really. So he seems like somebody that I will be having a lot of exposure to in DFS, not from a betting standpoint, but just because you can't bet them all. Next, Jon Rahm at number 3, Rory at number 4, Patrick Cantlay at number 5. Those top 5, I think, are going to be the consensus. Five best players in this field. That makes sense. That kind of validates the model. Eric Cole, interesting at number 6. Kind of sticks out here. Not somebody that I'm going to bet outright, but his form is really incredible. I think he's top 5 strokes gained total over the last 36 and 50 rounds. So he continues to play well. He finished T6 at the Canadian Open last week. One of the long shots that I like from a placement betting standpoint, from a DFS standpoint. Really impressive player, could be the front runner for Rookie of the Year this year. Tyrrell Hatton, number 7, continues to kind of backdoor his way into top 3, top 5 finishes. What he did at the Players, posting a number and almost getting into a playoff, is exactly what he just did at the Canadian Open. He just seems to have one bad round every tournament and then 3 great ones. So he's definitely circling a win. Would not surprise me if Tyrrell Hatton won this week. He's definitely seems like he has to win some event this year. So it could be this week. We'll see. Victor Hovland, very popular player this week, coming off of the Memorial win, 16-1, very short for a player like Hovland. You might even find him at half the odds of Colin Morikawa, which is crazy to think about in a U.S. Open, where Colin has had so much success, back-to-back top 5s the last 2 years. But there's no doubt Hovland is great ball striking. The around the green has started to improve. Even looking at this 97, that's much better than it has been for Hovland. He's been in the deep hundreds for most of his career. So that is improving. And he's a player to watch. Hideki Matsuyama, always a player to watch if he's healthy. So monitor his health. But if we're playing an Augusta comp, Hideki makes a ton of sense. And Tony Finau is number 10 in the model. Another guy who plays really well in Opens, plays really well at the Masters. And I believe he has a couple good U.S. Open finishes in his career. So he's definitely going under the radar. Somebody that if ownership is not there, in DFS. Seems like a little bit of a overlooked elite player. That could be a nice little leverage play this week. So I will now filter this to my outright bets. And if you are in the Discord, you already know this. But I am going with a very tight card of Scotty Scheffler at 7.5 to 1, which is shorter than the 8 to 1 like ratio that I usually try to hit with my outrights. For a major, I'm comfortable going a little bit overexposed if I think one guy is definitely going to win. There's no sure things in golf. Nobody is a lock. There's 155 other guys who could win this week. So 7 to 1 is a very short number and a lot of risk to take on. But to me, it's worth it. If you've got the guy who is number one in strokes gained off the tee, number one in strokes gained approach, and number one in strokes gained around the green, then naturally he will also be number one from tee to green. That's insane. To be the best in the best field in golf in all three of those tee to green categories is just absolute dominance. He's number two in the comp course history. He, of course, won at Augusta in dominant fashion when the putter was hot. I think there's a little bit of an overreaction to Scotty's putter right now, maybe deservedly so when you lose like 9 strokes putting at the Memorial. Had he lost even half of that, lost like 3 or 4 strokes putting, he would have won that tournament and probably been like 5 to 1 to win this week. So maybe you even look at 7.5 to 1 as a value. That's maybe a little bit of a stretch, but I don't think he's going to lose 8 strokes putting 2 weeks in a row. I also don't think Scotty Scheffler is this lost and helpless putter. I think when you are the best approach player in the field, you set yourself up to lose the most strokes putting. If all of your birdie putts are from 5 feet and you don't hit all of them, you're supposed to make like, 60% of your 5-footers. So if you make 30% of those 5-footers, you're now giving up basically like a full stroke putting. Whereas if you're a bad approach player, let's say you're Taylor Montgomery and all of your birdie looks are from 25 to 30 feet, you're only supposed to make like 1 out of 10 of those. And if you hit 3 out of 10 of those, you're all of a sudden a fantastic putter. So I don't necessarily think, Scotty Scheffler's not Luke List here. Like if he's stepping over a 3-footer, I have confidence that he's going to hit some of those, or he should hit all of them, but in a major, I have confidence that he will hit the short ones when he needs to. And this is a guy, let's not forget, who has dominated Birdie Fest. And before he won his first Masters, I think the reputation for Scotty was that you play him when you need birdies. I know he shot, I think he has a 59, maybe in college or maybe on Korn Ferry. I know he shot 60 at TPC Boston in Birdie Fest conditions. So Scotty gives himself looks. He's somebody who can go low, even in difficult scoring conditions. I'm happy to take a chance here at 7.5 to 1 that the putter is okay. And I really do not think that Scotty is incapable of gaining with the putter. I'm going to pull up his recent results. Shield your eyes at the putting results at Memorial, and obviously 2 straight weeks where he's lost a combined 13 strokes putting seems daunting. But he gained a stroke and a half at the PGA Championship in his last major start. So if he gains a stroke and a half putting and he does all of this, gaining 4 around the green, 11 on approach, 4 off the tee, he's going to win by like 5 or 6 strokes if he does that. So I think it's worth the risk. This is not all red when you look at Scotty Scheffler. He is not completely broken. He is not losing strokes every single week putting. He's just had a couple weeks in a row where his ball striking was so immaculate that he had so much opportunity to lose strokes putting, and he probably didn't have a lot of opportunity to gain a full stroke putting. So we got to keep that in mind. I don't think he's completely lost. I think he can fix this. And again, look at all of these green results he's had, even at Phoenix where he won. He gained 4 strokes putting. So there's just no reason for me to fade Scotty Scheffler right now. The tee to green numbers are absolutely absurd. If there was ever a time to bet the odds-on favorite, I think it's this week where we see Augusta comps. That's the last time that he looked dominant. I see a ton of Waste Management comps where he's won the last 2 years, and just an emphasis on creative shot making. So I think Scotty Scheffler, I would not be surprised if he won this event by like 6 strokes this week. I wouldn't be surprised if he lost 8 strokes putting and finished like a mediocre T15 either, but I don't really see any scenario where he finishes outside the top 20 this week. So love Scheffler. I'm not alone. I'm not on an island there with that Scheffler take. Seeing a lot more like single bullet short cards with Scheffler on them this week than I might have expected, since the putter has been such a glaring weakness. But I think, sharp minds know that Scheffler won't be losing strokes putting for the rest of his career. So, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. I would be lying too if I didn't say me not being able to watch the U.S. Open on Sunday plays into this. I'm kind of betting on a scenario that I want to happen. If you read my tournament preview this week, I touched on the fact that I will be out of Wi-Fi service on Sunday at a wedding. So I won't see how this tournament ends. I am really hoping that I wake up Sunday morning and Scotty has a 6-stroke lead, and I just assume that he coasts to victory. So I'm kind of betting on that. That's how I chose to go about it this week, but to each their own. In addition to Scheffler, I have a couple of futures here. Really, if you're betting Scheffler, you shouldn't have much else on the card if you're trying to be responsible week to week. These were futures that I put in, and the Scheffler bet is kind of subsidized with some free bets and some odds boosts as well. So for me personally, I did manage to get these extra names on the card and still have like a full amount of exposure that I typically would on any given week. But Homa is a bet that I placed after his finish at Riv, where he just missed out on winning again in California. He would have had 3 wins this year if he closed it over John Rahm. But he does have wins at the Fortinet and the Genesis this season. He has wins at the Fortinet and Torrey Pines for the Farmers this season. So he plays well in California. Everybody knows that. He holds the course record here from the Pac-12 championship many years ago. A lot of people know that as well. Local favorite in California. He will have the crowd on his side, and he seems to relish that from everything that we've seen before. So I have a 35-1 on him. I think it's pretty solid value still. You might be able to get that number this week. I'm seeing 30 is probably consensus for Homa. But you have to, feel pretty good about Homa's chances whenever he gets to California. So we'll see how that goes. And then similar, rationale for Sahith Theegala. He has 4 top 15 finishes in his career over the last 2 years in the state of California. Plays really well in front of the home crowd. Another guy who relishes the local fans' support, and played well at the Waste Management, which I still think is a good comp. He also had a top 10 at the Masters this year. So has played well when you can be a little bit more open off the tee. Don't need to hit drivers on every hole. I think you'll see him kind of pound that driving iron a little bit more on this course. And I have to believe that he's played here once or twice before this week with all of his local ties to California. So that is the card. It's just three names here. That's going to be the case whenever you bet Scotty Scheffler. There will be more props here. If you followed along on Twitter, you'll know that I now have a 725-1 Sebastian Munoz first round leader ticket, thanks to Bam Adebayo's first basket in the NBA Finals last night. So that'll be fun to sweat. I will be there on Friday. By the way, this is not a U.S. Open golf hat. This is a U.S. Open tennis hat. So I need to upgrade my merch. I'm going to get some LACC U.S. Open merch on Friday. Look out for me there. Definitely hit me up if you're going to be there on Friday, because I am golfing Friday morning and then showing up on my own in between connection flights. And I will probably just follow Scotty Scheffler's group. I was looking at tee times. He tees up one of the last ones of the of the day at like a 1:30, I think, LA time. And he's with Homa. So it's going to be a massive crowd, but I'm going to miss the first half of the day and probably just be following along that group all day, since all of my outrights are essentially right there. So that is it. Exciting week ahead. I'm taking off to LA later tonight, and just really excited to see this course in person and watch it on TV for 2 other days, and then hopefully not being able to watch all of the final round. Maybe that's what I need. Maybe I'm a jinx when I watch the U.S. Open, and that's why I haven't been able to get over the line in the last few years. So we'll see if that changes up the mojo. In any case, thank you guys very much for following along, for all the support this week, for all the likes and shares on Twitter, the follows, all very much appreciated. This is one of my favorite weeks of golf of the year, and I can't wait for U.S. Open to hit us on Thursday. So best of luck with all of your bets, and good luck this week.